Morning, folks. I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School down here at the Pathfinder Outdoor Classroom area. What I thought we'd do today is we'd take a piece of maple and make a simple spoon. We do this a lot in Bushcraft 101 class, and it seems to be a struggle for a lot of people. They seem to make it too big and too fat and too heavy to begin with, and then they have to spend a lot of time carving wood off of it. And really, you should be able to get this down to a fairly good blank with just an axe. If you have the right axe or the right hatchet to do it with, you should be able to get this down to a pretty usable blank that you just need to take a little bit off of and shape it up with a knife and a hook knife to get a final product. So what you really want is, you want at least a half of a good size sapling to start with, something that's about 3 inches in diameter, 4 inches in diameter. You want to split that in half because we're going to want to get rid of this pithy area that is dead wood. And we're only going to want to use the sap wood to make the spoon. This piece is probably 10 inches long. It's longer than we really need it for an eating spoon. We can shorten it up after the fact. But for now, let's see what we can do to get this to a blank. This knot down here at the end, we got one small knot in here. I think I'm going to use that as the handle end because I may end up cutting that off anyway and shortening it up. And we'll use this front side. It's got one little knot in it right here that we're going to get rid of, hopefully with our split, to cut this in half again. And then we're going to start making our spoon blank. So again, clear of knots, green wood, some type of a decent hardwood like maple is going to make a long-lasting spoon. If you want something that's easy to carve, something like poplar, birch is the traditional material for this stuff. But birch and maple both work really, really well because they're a nice, sleek wood with nice, tight grain. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to split this sapling down. So we'll stand this dude up, and we'll use our axe for this. And this is the knot end, so I'm going to leave that at the bottom. So I want a good clean split here at the top. And I'm going to try to split this in half because if I don't split it in half, it's going to try to run off on me. And I don't need a real big piece for this spoon. Okay, there we go. There's a nice flat piece right there that came off there that we're not going to use. But you can see how clean that grain is on that. Really, really nice, okay? Now, we got a little bit of a knot left in it here. That's not going to hurt anything. It's going to be about where our bowl's at anyway. This back here is going to be where our handle's at. That's not going to hurt anything. We're ready to start carving our blank. So the first thing I would tend to do with this is I would tend to try to figure out how deep I want my bowl or how large I want my bowl. And then I would take some kind of a saw, and this is an actual silky saw that's made for woodworking, like a back saw. So it's got really fine teeth. And I'm just going to cut down into the spoon, just like this. Make a stop cut right there on both sides. And this is going to be the thickness in the end of my handle. I have to be careful with that, all right? And I want to get those fairly even as far as depth goes. What I would do with this, before you split this off, because what's going to happen is, when you attempt to split this, it's going to close this kerf that you made with this saw, and it's going to pinch trying to come off. You can relieve that by getting rid of some material here. So what I would do is I would take your axe and I would cut into this a little bit, either from the top or the bottom, doesn't really matter, down into that kerf a little bit like this. And this is going to end up being the back of your spoon. Real careful, real easy. Try to get those about as even as you can get them. Starting about the same place to get rid of that material. This is why a good sharp axe is really important right here. So you can take those fine shavings off of there. And once you get down to where your cut line is on both sides, now you'll be able to relieve this by taking it off, and it will just split right off, and you won't have any chance of this breaking into your bowl. Okay, now we can come back up here, and we can come from this end, and it's always better to sneak in a little bit and have to do it twice, and just watch it as it splits down. Watch the split as it runs down the wood, and it should just jump right off just like that did, because it's not going to hang up in the kerf anymore. You can see there's a little bit left to come off there. I can get that with a knife here in just a minute, or I can get it with the axe. Same thing here, just falls right off. Now you can see that that's in a wedge shape, and that's because we didn't split this wood in the middle. It's always gonna run off if you're not splitting in the middle. So now you're gonna have to come back in here and kind of trim down to that spot. Bump cuts like this give you a lot of control with that. Again, a good sharp axe is gonna come in real handy here. Now I've got a good gentle curve right there. And the same thing there, okay? I'm pretty happy with that. You can always come back and clean some of this stuff up with a knife later. You will anyway, but it's easy enough to get rid of a lot of this stuff with your axe. Now you can come down to this side, get right back after it again to get that handle where you want it. Okay. Okay. Now, we're still working on the blank part of this. Now we have to figure out what's next, okay? If we're gonna make a bowl right here, then we might as well take these corners off. So you can just stand this up just like this, whack those corners off just like that. And the same thing over here. Just run that corner right off. Now you've got more of a round shape right here. Now you can go ahead and take this edge off here, this edge off here. And now we can start getting a little bit thinner with this handle if we want to. Taking a little bit more off of it. We're leaving it nice and thick right now, and I'll show you why we're doing that here in a minute. Again, we're probably going to cut this knot off. So don't get too particular about that right now. Not too shabby there. Now what we want to do is we want to take this and we kind of come back in here. So we're going to come back on the back of this bowl back here. We're going to kind of cut into it here. Just like that. Okay. Get that kind of narrowed down a little bit. So I've got this rough grouse out here. You'll probably be able to hear it in the background of the video in a minute. It's about 10 feet away from me right now. I caught this thing yesterday with my hat just to see if I could catch it. And I immediately let it go. It flew off into the woods. And as soon as I came down here this morning, it flew back in here to the clearing. And now it's kind of circling me, getting closer and closer every minute. So it's liable to get in the film here before it's over with. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to thin this back side down more. So we're going to come in here, get ourselves a good chunk of this. Bump cut that thing down. Now I'm just taking a little off the side here, just like this, where the back of my bowl is, all the way down. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here in just a minute. All this material reduction is no different with wood than it is with stone or anything else. you're creating peaks and valleys. You're creating a peak, you're removing that peak, which creates a valley on each side and a peak on each side of that, basically. And you're taking away the peaks, which is what we're doing here. We're removing a peak all the way down to thin this handle down, just like that, and that created another peak here and another peak here. Okay, right now what we're concentrating on trying to do is we're going to remove these inside peaks now, because we're trying to make this handle narrower in this area, and it'll be flat and wide at that point, and we'll put a keel on the back of the spoon to support it. You can see we've created another peak right down the middle of that thing. We'll go right back after that. You can probably hear that grouse. He's about 8 feet away now, sitting down watching me. Okay, so now let's get in here a little bit deeper where we missed our stop cut. Come in here and take a peak off right there. And we'll come over here and take that peak off about the same height. Okay, now I'm going to flip this over now, and I'm going to shape the front of this bowl a little bit with my axe. I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to rotate the material into the blade. I'm not really moving the blade. I'm just going up and down with the blade in a chopping motion, and I'm rotating the material into that blade. It's always safer to do that than it is to take big swings with the axe, okay? You can see we're staying fairly even in thickness here all the way as we go. That's exactly what we want. Now I'm going to step back up here for a minute. Come back after another spot right here. Just like that. And then this side here, the same way. Start to develop that keel right there. You see I still got a little bit of stop cut left here. A little bit left right there. We'll end up taking care of that with our knife here in a few minutes, but for now, we're just trying to keep our symmetry the same, okay? Okay, that's not too bad. Probably gonna end up cutting this off about right in here somewhere, but we're getting close. Still a lot of meat on this thing that come off with an axe before we start with a knife, honestly. It's just a matter of how much of it you're comfortable doing. This grouse would probably let me walk over and pick it up. We should find out. Can you see it right there? Yes, you can. Okay. 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 All right, baby. All right. Look at that. Crazy. Okay, back to the spoon, I guess. The grouse entertainment is over for the moment. Now, you could go further than this for sure with the axe, but I don't think I'm going to. I'm gonna get after this thing with a knife. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to look at how we want to shape our bowl and the length of our handle. All right, so I've kind of drawn a spoon bowl on here to keep my symmetry and find out where I need to go. And I usually bring it down about to the middle of the handle here just to kind of give myself a triangle. And then I come across here to get the symmetry of the bowl I'm looking for. Pretty simple process. I start off with a center line and I work off of that. And now I know what I can still get rid of with the axe because I got plenty of meat left on this thing. And now if I want to, I can come back in here with this axe and get rid of a little bit more of this that I would end up carving off with a knife anyway. I do a lot of bump cuts when I'm doing this because they're more controlled. And I can clean the rest of that up with a knife when I'm done. But I'm going right to the line almost as I can here. Sorry, our grouse finally took off. Old Zon might be lurking around here somewhere. Zon's been trying to catch it for 2 days and he can't catch it. Okay, not too shabby. Yep, there's Zon right there. Hey buddy, I knew you had to be somewhere close. That grouse taking off like that, like a shot. Okay, so now I'm probably going to start with the hook knife here while I still got some stuff to hang on to. So you can use about any hook knife you want to. The Bushcraft ones aren't too bad. This one's actually hand forged from the Ukraine. Got a little wider scoop on it, I like that. The key to these hook knives is just understanding how to use them. And basically you're using them pretty much like a potato peeler, where you're coming across the grain with them just like this. And don't try to take out too much at one time, but keep that back thumb out of the way when you're doing this, or you will pay the price. I can guarantee you that thing will go right into your thumb, put you in a hurt locker. Now you can also use these things like a push cut, like this. And sometimes that gives you a little more control over what you're doing, especially if you're just doing chip carving, right? And it really depends on how much control you've got over this knife and how sharp this thing is, how much you can really get away with. But what you want to make sure of is that you never get high in the center and you can't go across it. You always want to be able to go across the center line of that piece. Again, that's much like flint knapping. When you're flint knapping, you try to go across the center with a flake so that you don't get high in the center and it'll stop the flake from traveling. It's kind of the same thing with this. You don't want anything stopping that cut from going all the way across the center if you can get it that way. And then it's just a matter of taking a little bit at a time. And again, I like to kind of rotate the work into the blade if I can. You see, I'm kind of holding the knife still and I'm rotating the blade. And I'm trying to come all the way across every time, just like that. And if I can go across that center line every time, I'm doing myself a favor. Okay? Now, the other thing I see people do with these spoons is they try to go way too deep. You should always be testing the spoon as you're cutting it out once you get the initial profile in there to see how it fits your mouth. And there's a trick to that that I'm going to show you here in just a minute. Always trying to go all the way across. Every time. Now it's time for me to put some glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. The rest of that stuff wasn't too bad without glasses on. This is going to be a little trickier without the glasses. So we'll try to put the glasses on here so we can see what we're doing. I get the profile of the spoon bowl cut in. And I'm kind of trying to just stay at an even depth all the way across here right now. Again, people tend to get too deep with these things. They don't need to be that deep. Just kind of switch hands as you have to get what you need. With these spoon bowls, you kind of have to cut in clockwise motion. Like you can go here to here, or here to here, or here to here, here to here, here to here, but you can't go from here uphill. You have to stay going downhill all the time. So if you're coming from here, you're gonna go downhill toward the center. That's the other reason for not getting high centered in there, is so that you can always get across that center line when you're carving that in there. You see, I'm just kind of rocking that knife in the bottom of that bowl. I'm just kind of rocking the work. I'm not really moving the knife much. I'm really just kind of rocking the work at this point to get that smoothed out in there. I got one spot right here. That's a little bit trickier, but I can get to it easy enough just by rocking it back and forth. I'm not trying to get real aggressive with this thing and take off any giant shavings. It's not necessary. If you got a good sharp tool, it's not necessary to do that, okay? I like the way this maple, how tight the grain is on this maple. It's almost like the birch. Not quite as smooth, but close. You want a nice smooth bowl, you gotta have a tight grained wood for that. The looser grained wood you got, the choppier that bowl is gonna look. And don't be afraid to come out there with the very front of that hook tool and pull in with it. If you got a good hook tool, it shouldn't be a problem. You'll never catch that one's on. It's got eyes in the back of its head, buddy. It knows you're coming. It's not some silly sparrow or some dumb rabbit. Okay, I'm not gonna fuss with that too much more. Now I'm gonna start shaping the front end of this bad boy with a knife. Okay, a nice long thin blade like this is really good because this point's gonna come in handy later for turning tight corners. The thinner this blade is as far as the narrowness of it goes, and the taper, that's really important, okay? That's gonna do you a lot of favors in the end when you start carving this thing. So right now, all we're doing is we're just kind of cutting this thing down to the line all the way around and getting our profile right. Then we'll worry about other stuff here in a minute. And we're gonna use several different grips, from scissor grips to pinching grips. There we go, not too bad. And now again, you've got this big chunk, all right? You can just take off that whole peak that you just created right there, because that's gonna round out your bowl. And you don't want this thing to weigh 5 pounds when you're done. The point of a wooden spoon is that it's nice and nimble, not something that you gotta feel like you're lifting weights every time you use the thing. And now I'm just kind of thinning this thing down all the way around. You just kind of hold it with your fingers and do this to test how thick your bowl is. But if you didn't go too deep, which you shouldn't have, and we'll talk about that in a minute, why that is, if you didn't go too deep, should be okay. Now we'll come over to this side and we'll do the same thing. We'll take this peak completely off all the way around. Then we'll get behind it and take that off. And then we'll take the one off next to it. And we're just kind of working our way up. Again, we don't want to get too high right here, or we can't cut across that, okay? Okay, we're getting somewhere. Okay, just a little bit of a break there. And you need to do that once in a while so that you don't get in a rush with this stuff. Now I'm supporting this knife and I've got it right here. So there's no way that thing can hit me in the chest, because the back of the knife's gonna hit me first. And I'm not afraid to pull that work to get it out of the way either. And I'm just kind of cutting that knife around that corner a little bit, just like that. Taking some of this out. And you can see I got a spot right there where it's raised up. That's because I'm going uphill. Cat, are you kidding me? Will you get off of me? Are you crazy? We got too much love going on around here right now. And I'm trying to do multiple things at once here. All right. Get this bowl cut down a little bit more. In the back side here. Again, we got a lot of thickness back in here that we need to get rid of too. That's why I was cutting so far back. So I wouldn't be cutting uphill on that thing. I just kind of take that out a little at a time so you don't have that problem. Remember that line you're trying to keep right there, that rim you're trying to keep around it. Be cognizant of that the whole way. I have a cat on my shoulders here while I'm trying to carve. Added level of stress here. Cat claws in the back. Now, the back of this bowl, we need to come down on like this. All right, and we're going to try to get some meat off of this thing going this direction first. I'll worry about the back of that handle in a minute. It's going to transition into a flat. Right now I'm just trying to get a good keel on this handle. That's pretty even and straight down the middle. Okay. That's not horrible bad. Going uphill right there. I've cut down into that a little bit. That's fine. There we go. Okay. Now we'll go back up here and look at this. Everything's a matter of looking at what you're doing all the time, okay? Just looking at what's not where it's supposed to be and getting rid of that. Little scissor cuts. Little scissor cuts till you get what you want. Okay? Now, we're not getting too bad here. We're not looking too bad. Now we're going to come in here and we're going to take these pencil marks off by coming straight down through here with a slice of cheese out of this thing. Try to clean this up a little bit. And then I'm going to come in here and clean this up just a shade. Okay. Getting somewhere now. Now we could probably cut off about that much of that dude for right now. Just get rid of that. We're not going to need it in the end anyway. So we'll just kind of cut across that grain, square him off a little bit, maybe leave a little bit of a tip on there. We'll address that in a minute here. Just want to get it kind of even at the moment. Pull off anything on there that's not clean. Actually getting somewhere now. Took us a little bit of time, but we're there. We're where we want to be. As far as where we should be anyway. All right, now we can come back in with our spoon knife. Once we're pretty convinced that we're good with our bowl, as far as everything goes here. Got a little bit of a spot right here that's trying to give me a little bit of a fit. Get him cleaned up here, round it out. You're always going to sit and look at this thing and say, okay, what if I take that off? What if I take that off? And sooner or later, you're going to end up taking something off you don't want to take off. So don't get too overexcited about it. Like I said, when you start getting to the point where you're frustrated about an area or something, you got a certain spot that the grain's wanting to raise up on or something like that, and you can't get it to smooth out, don't get excited about it and start messing it up at that point. Just take a break from it for a second and think about it. Okay, now I'm going to go back into this bowl, and now I'm trying to make sure that have a small lip all the way around this that's the same symmetry. This little lip I've got going all the way around this spoon bowl, I want that to be symmetrical. I've got a little bit of work to do up here in the front. A little bit of a transition there we got to work on. We'll get there. Just like that. Don't be afraid to use the tip of that or the edge of that. If that knife's good and sharp, it should do everything you need it to do. Now, the drier this thing gets, the more chance there is of it not carving real good for you. So just kind of watch that. If it starts to dry out, there's nothing wrong with soaking the thing in water. All right, now I'm just coming back with my carving knife here, and I'm kind of flattening this out a little bit, trying to take care of that problem area that I had right there. Just the edge of my carving knife to get that where I want it. A little bit of a spot right there I don't like. I'll get that. Okay. That's not too shabby right there. Now, let's talk about the spoon for a minute and about the depth and things like that in the back of the bowl. There's still probably a little bit of work that could be done back here. I've got plenty of material here. I can still take some meat off the back of the spoon. It's still thicker than it needs to be. Again, the lighter this thing is in the end, the better it's going to function for you, the more of a pleasure it's going to be to use. So don't have a heart attack about thinning this thing out where you need to. Now, with a spoon like this, what you're really looking for is, you can see how thick it is, right? When you put your mouth on this spoon and you pull it out, if your upper lip doesn't drag the whole bottom of that bowl, then you made it too deep. You're pulling food off the spoon with your lip as you pull it out of your mouth. So you've got to make sure that your bottom lip, or your upper lip, excuse me, drags that spoon bowl all the way. If it does that, you're gonna have a spoon that's gonna be a pleasure to eat with. All right, guys, listen, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. I appreciate you guys joining me out here today for this pretty much a seminar on making a spoon from start to finish. I know it's a little lengthy, but there's a little entertainment value in there in between things, and I apologize for the length of the video, but I think it's all important, and it's a good seminar that you would sit through, and it would take a couple hours anyway, and I've cut a little bits and pieces of it out so it wasn't quite so lengthy, but all the important parts are there. So I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for family, for business, all our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks.